to the Lumber Channel Live. We're going to go for week. We're going to say this is week what, Greg and Matt, for
the Lumber Channel? It's week two.
Week two. And this show, I got to quit saying my wife told me after she listened to our last podcast. We are week two of the Lumber Word. And how's your guys' week going so far? Matt, were you out last week or are you back now? With your beautiful Mount Bachelor picture in the back.
I was. Yeah, thanks. I was working last week. Wasn't super busy, but I'm a little busier this week. But it's still not as busy as it was in July.
Greg, how about yourself?
It's been straight out busy, Ash. I look at the market and I mean, there's lots going on every day. It's part of it's a mindset, but the reality is there's a lot of lumber flowing every day. There's liquidity in the marketplace. We can talk about the price action, which clearly we've been under pressure now for several weeks, and it's like you sell a lot of lumber today, and a couple of days later you can sell a lot of lumber, but you just have to be a lot cheaper. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
If I walked into class and they gave me a pop quiz today and said, "Hey, sum up the lumber in the last week," I'd probably say two to 3 weeks ago we started maybe losing a little liquidity. The market had, if you want to look at, and Greg, you have a good point all the time about the CME. It's so lightly traded. It's something to watch when it goes a big premium and a big discount. We were a big premium 4 weeks ago. We are now, I would say, arguably, not knowing exactly where 4-inch cash is on spruce, a somewhat of a discount. We're trying to find a bottom in here. We know when we get sub 400 BC relative to BC, it's probably unsustainable. We all get print and look at the numbers being down. With that said, Greg, you summed it up pretty well when I talked to you this week, that the market probably, I'm going to put word, rolled over a few 2 to 3 weeks earlier than you may have thought it had. But with that said, there's still really decent liquidity out there. When you hang numbers on something, you get orders. So that's how I would write my quiz up. Greg, what do you think on that?
Yes.
Matt, what's your thought?
I just feel like we're in a normal kind of August market where people are on vacation and they're distracted, and it's hot out, so there's just not as much flow of material to job sites as there would be in a cooler. Fast forward a month from now, you're going to have a lot cooler temperatures and probably a lot more material moving out to job sites in September than August. And so, to me, this is expected. We had a pretty busy July based on supply constraints. So people kind of reinvested and refilled their coffers a little bit. Now they're just digesting through that material, and I don't think there's a lot of inventory laying around that's like what I would call distressed inventory. I really don't. I think most of that's been cleaned up the last 90 days.
It's
people could probably buy some lumber if they really wanted to, but we're not quite to the value point on dimension lumber yet where guys like me or you are going to say, yeah, let's throw down and buy 20, 30 cars of that, Now on studs, some things have changed quickly, and I think that we are. Like on some stud trims and some of the studs that we're much busier on studs right now at Hampton than on like dry spruce dimension. So, I think maybe the bottom's in on that. We'll see as the month goes on. But it feels
what are dry hemp for 8 and 9 foot worth delivered Chicago today?
Below 500 on the 248s. On the 9-footers, I mean, it's kind of a guess. I'd say 5 1/4, 530, somewhere in that range. Maybe 510 to 520. It just depends on who you're talking to and what market you're at. But our problem at Hampton is we don't make a lot of 9-footers. That's not really an issue for us. We're more like potlatch. Potlatch pumps out a straight, whole bunch of 92s and 96s, and that's kind of how our mills are set up as well.
So
So
how is the home
um,
center takeaway right now?
Good question.
Is that why the 8-foot is more plentiful, or is it because
I think we filled up their filled up their inventories in July. We have a little teeny bit of excess 8-foot the last 2 weeks, but that's going away. So we're back into the shoulder season now, and our takeaway is still really good with the home center business. That's not slowed down a bit. In fact, it's heading into the busiest time of year. So I would assume that 8-foot premium lumber is going to get tight again here over the next 60 days and
So,
all the way through
Greg,
Thanksgiving.
great question. To add to that, do you, Greg and Matt, think that maybe the 8-footers still have a lot of liquidity in them? As one, the home centers, but two, and Greg, you brought this up months ago, talking to people. Are people trying to build homes a little bit less expensive or smaller, and maybe putting 8-foot walls into homes instead of 9 and 10-foot walls in some cases in new home construction?
we've got reports, and I think I'm not sure if it's teased out in the major builders earnings reports, but we have reports from the field that listen, the builders are building smaller houses, to get a more effective price point, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
affordability is one of the big issues, and okay, I mean, Alan's sharing that he got 455 on 116s. I'm not sure if that's mill delivered or both.
I'm assuming it's delivered to wherever Alan is.
Yeah. So yeah, Ash, I think that's the part of the reason on 8-footers where I have some relative strength due to the fact that there's more demand on the smaller homes.
Yeah, and Greg, you always say too that the 9-footers are going to continue to be a staple item because there's so much is used in multifamily and obviously new home construction also. Ellen just said cars to Texas.
Good sale.
Yeah. So
Good sale.
That's pretty cheap.
Inventory. We always talk about where is the wood in the pipeline right now. Is it at the mill level? Is it at the distribution level? Where do you both see inventories at? And I think from what I see, watching the CME and everything, everybody's in as Greg, as we put it, there's accumulation, there's distribution. It seems like everybody's in the distribution mode in the inventory cycle right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about when we most recently bottomed out, back in late May. I mean, Western Spruce 2x4s on the CME had $160 rally from let's just say mid-May to mid-July. And I mean, there was a lot of inventory accumulation in the pipeline that went along with that, and it was driven by the curtailments and summer shutdowns. I mean, we've given back $100 of that. I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around going, okay, so, how much are we going to go all the way back down to where we were, or, somewhere for that? And, it's interesting when, Matt was saying it's like, August kind of like summer doldrums. And I always think about, I mean, every year is different, but when I talk about spruce and I think about the seasonality of it, this year has been very, very typical. You have a Q1 inventory accumulation into the spring building season. You have a Q2 correction. Then you have a rally into summer shutdowns and midsummer. And then you have a correction into August. Historically, you have another kind of bounce somewhere here to the 1st of September into mid-late September. And then you resume that downward to the seasonal low in late October, November, December. So, trying to, I'm trying to, like, if I put that as a backdrop, the market
Yeah.
seems pretty oversold right now, technically and
Yep.
emotionally.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm emotionally oversold right now.
Are you drained?
Not yet.
Are you tired? Are you
Not
exhausted?
yet. Not yet. I've
Great.
got a lot of
Greg,
lot
great
of-
point. Great point. Let me jump in and ask a question then with you here. You always had, Matt and I always talked with you for the last 20 years about what's the best short you can take. You know, one that you can cover in 24 to 48 hours, right? I have a feeling from what I'm seeing out there on bids from people now and what I'm hearing people are taking in the wholesale community that we may be getting near your oversold because there are people that are frustrated at this point in our life. When we get frustrated as seasoned traders, we sit back and let other people do things that don't make sense. Does that make sense? And
That's happening right now on
yeah,
studs, dude. So
that's my point, Matt.
we've got people trying to come in and buy last week's cheapest price today at minus
Yeah.
20 of what we took last week on stuff that we sold already. And we're just like, yeah, no, we'll pass, you know. So when you start seeing evidence of that, it's exactly what you're just talking about.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing the evidence of that. And I know Greg and I were talking this week about, boy, we hung some numbers on something that we had and somebody else took it. We're like, why would they take that? Right. And so
Yeah.
it seems to be, and I could be wrong, but those are the orders that get taken out of frustration or out of I have to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Greg, does that make sense too?
I think frustration is a
Yeah.
big one, and boredom, you know. So if you don't have I don't know, I mean, Greg has mill production to
Yeah.
sell, right? And Greg has imported lumber on contract that he has to sell. So basically he acts like a mill, you know, and mills are always long. So they always have to find the market. Traders can stop. Traders can take a break if they want to, and they can choose to be long or short or neutral. Right now I'm neutral. I'm not short. I think it's too late to be short, you know, just as a general theory. You know, the time to be short is when everybody's wanting to buy, and the time to be long is when everybody's wanting to sell. Like right now is more of a mills wanting to sell. I don't think there's a lot of, like I said earlier, I don't think there's a lot of excess inventory laying around. I would buy lumber right now if somebody came to me with some good deals, but I'm not getting good deal to death at this point. Really, there's just not a lot of things out there that I'm being offered that attracts me, and so I'm just content to sit back and sell what little inventory I have and just be patient. It is mid-August, and the market will tell me where to go next, right? I'm not going to force it.
So if you're a large buyer out there, whether you're at a home builder, chain yard, whatever, so some of this, what I consider the smart buyers, are putting bids in right now and are having people take orders, and the way they do it is by saying, hey, we're not worried about ship time, right? So that's the big one. Anybody that tells me I'm not worried about ship time, but can you take this $60 under this price, like I run away from right away. But with that said, there's a lot of that being done. Where are you all seeing the multifamily side of business right now with jobs in the forward business? Because that's typically where are you seeing typical for this time of the year, Greg, on the multifamily jobs?
So multifamily segment is pretty active. It appears that there's a lot of jobs out there that are running late and delayed for, you know, one reason or another. I'm trying to get a handle on, you know, what's left to cover for, you know, between now and the end of the year. You know, you think right now, I think that people are waiting on the prices to come back on a lot of things that they have in the pipeline for kind of that October, November start. And historically, when people start talking November, December start, that's first quarter. That says first quarter to me. But I mean, my wild card on multifamily is there going to be issues as we move forward here in the third and fourth quarter with, slowdown due to financing, because of the regional banks that dominate that space. Another negative that it's been a positive has been single family home sales have been better than everybody's expectations. I saw where the 30-year mortgage hit a 21-year high yesterday, and mortgage applications were down. So maybe, is that going to be a bogey is that going to be a big headwind for the balance of the year? Are we going to, where the single family had been better than everybody expected for the last six months or so, is it not going to meet that expectation?
Well, meanwhile, Greg, money markets are paying 5%, which is
5.35 today, Ashley.
Which is the last time they paid that?
I don't know the last time they paid it, but I think it started. I think it started with a 1.9.
2000. I think 2000. I was told today 2008 when they were about this high before they.
You mean just prior to the crash?
That's what I was told today by somebody that was trying to push me on one of those to buy it.
It's like playing golf, dude. You don't say the S word, okay?
Yeah, that's right.
Let's not go there.
That's right. So if you're a buyer, if you let's remove our seller's hats for a second here, but we are buyers too, Matt, Greg. What do you tell the buyer of that buys a lot of lumber sitting at his location up in Minneapolis or down in Texas, whether they're an independent or a chain yard? I mean, I'm sure some people get together in big groups and discuss what they want to do, but if you were going to some of them and tell them what's the reasons that what should you be doing right now as a buyer? I mean, most people, can we all agree have 60 days inventory? Does that make sense?
I don't know. I think that's part of a question, Ash, is depending on who you are. I don't think anybody as an end user has an exceptionally high inventory. I think they all have an adequate inventory for their current level of business, and they're going to react very quickly to any slowdown in their sales pace. Will be a pullback on purchasing. Increases in their sales pace or steady in their sales pace, will just have them continue to do what they're doing. But obviously price declines like this, by accident, people let their inventories fall because when the price goes down, it doesn't matter how much lumber you have too much.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. Yeah. That's a good point.
I would say, I would tell people my own strategy is I'm going to carry less inventory for the balance of the year and just be a little more nimble than I have been. I mean, there was some real good investment opportunities presented to me from January through May of this year. And that made sense, right? I mean, it just, when you're given a huge basis to deal with, on spruce 2x4
basis works, doesn't it, Matt?
Well, when you're buying 2x4 2 better at the number 3 price and selling a big premium in the board, it's kind of a child can do it. It's not like I had to really put a lot of thought into it, but that's not available to me right now. I'm more concerned about economic headwinds in the future at this point for the whole country. There's nothing to do with housing, just the general economy. And so under those conditions, I just feel like a guy that's a risk manager should just take less risk, and that's how I would counsel customers, right? Hey, look at your inventory as a pile of risk and manage it.
So what are mills going to do as far as production goes if everybody's kind of got the clutch pushed in a little bit as far as building inventory, because that inventory has to go somewhere?
Oh, they'll push and push and push until they don't like the prices anymore. Then they'll curtail. We'll see more curtailments announced at some point. There'll be some shock to the system. We're not done with the market. I mean, just because I have a theory doesn't mean it's going to come true either, right? We could actually see demand increase substantially in the third and fourth quarter from both the single family and the multifamily.
How is that going to happen? What is going to be?
I don't
is
know. I
gonna be
mean,
what possible catalyst could there be for that to happen for end use consumption to increase? I mean, seasonally, it's going to fall in the fourth quarter anyhow. I mean, that's a given.
right,
Seasonally, it's going to fall.
right.
But I
I'm just saying, Greg. Things happen that we
You're
don't
talking
expect.
you're talking
come
about
out
the
of left
hand, like the
field,
hand of
right?
God theory, Matt, that we used to talk about.
Sure. I'm just like
Okay,
things
yeah.
happen. Like one year we had Katrina, and I remember the president of Hampton at the time asked me, why is the board going up limit every day because of a hurricane? I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's because it wiped out a bunch of yellow pine production. And did anyone expect that? Does it make sense that you're like demolishing?
Right, and what, to your point, was somewhat similar to where we were today, where the market was under pressure, end use consumption was good and chewing up wood, but everybody was draining, and then Katrina hit, and was like $100 something rally. So yeah, that's legitimate point, Matt. Okay, I got that. I'm with you.
I just, you always have to expect the unexpected in our business, and it's odd that we can have an entire year where somebody doesn't throw us a curveball, right? And so far, we haven't really seen any curveballs this year. We're 8-0 on the reading of the tea leaves.
I think the biggest curveball this year happened right at the beginning of the year, when we came in and everyone was expecting 1,000,001 housing starts, and things were so much better, and we had a huge rally in January, another huge rally in March. If that was the curveball. And back to my theory is, the market always has the biggest moves when reality is so much different than what people's expectation that reality is going to be. So I'm always trying to think, what is the market's expected reality for the rest of the year? And and to your point, what could happen that would change that reality?
You just never know, right? You never know. But if you don't know and you're not sure, the best thing to do is just to be nimble and keep your inventory manageable. That's really the straightforward answer. That's how I would. Any of my customers, I'd tell them the same thing.
Yeah.
So look at our expectations are kind of in line with everybody else's right now, aren't they?
I don't know. I mean, if you're talking to a treater or to Home Depot and Lowe's, their expectations are upward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have a different look. They're gearing up for the busiest time of the year for them. And they keep forecasting year over year growth. It doesn't matter, what's going on in the world, whether it's COVID-19 or lumber prices deflating by 80%. They're like the Energizer Bunny.
Yeah.
So, and then we expect that the DR Hortons and the Lennars of the world were going to go out and buy down points and keep the houses moving, and have real good success with that strategy. They've done very well this year, and my hat's off to them. They got creative, and they've kept the ball moving.
Well, and it's also, that's been heavily driven by the lack of availability of existing homes. That's been the biggest driver on that. Is
hold on a second,
Yep.
Greg. I just got a report from my Portland real estate buddy.
okay.
Said that the
Both
July
boots on the
year
ground.
over year, the July year over year homes available to sell in the Portland metro area was the lowest it's ever been. So that condition hasn't changed. It's people are entrenched in their 3% mortgages. They have no reason to move,
Right.
and if they do move, they're probably moving out of state. They're not moving to a different neighborhood, right? They're just like they got transferred to Idaho or something.
So all right, let's just real quick ask a question. If you had to buy one item today and sell one item today, what would you buy and what would you get rid of?
Man, that's tough. Studs, 8s and 9s, make offers, cheap offers. If you can get somebody to dance for you on studs, they've corrected quite quickly.
What would you sell?
I don't know, 2x6, anything, just because it's not as liquid as it used to be. It's not that it's a price point. 2x6 you can buy cheaper.
Yeah.
Again, it's cheaper than 2x4. And for the longest time, we were a premium on 2x6, right? Didn't matter if it was yellow pine or spruce or Doug fir, hem fir. just 2 by 6 everything with a grade stamp on it. 2 and better, higher grade was a premium to 2 by 4, and that's flipped. So on this, at the same point, you could say it's a value now, but it still needs to be sold. There's mills that have piles of 2 by 6 laying around, and as a mill guy, I would want to sell
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
right?
and that therein lies the challenge is that I don't look at any lumber product today as being quote unquote investment level. So what do I look at as investment level? Historically low price, well below mill cost of production, and is it hedgeable? Well, there's really nothing that's hedgeable today with the future market at the the 85 equivalent Western spruce. So there's really nothing that's hedgeable from a basis standpoint. And in terms of what would I sell? Well, I mean, kind of like everything's a sell. It's just a question of like where's that price relative to that investment, and to Matt's point, 2 by 6. As a mill sales, the mills has been happy to increase their production and shipments on 2 by 6 because it's been getting the best return.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy how that just happens?
Guess and it took longer than everybody thought, right? It held in a lot longer than everybody thought,
right?
But it's probably going to be undervalued into the fall also.
So the one thing I see all kinds of lists of today, where the people that didn't send me lists for 3 months that are now sending me lists, 2 by 4, 2 by 4, 2 by 4, and 2 by 6 10-footers. So,
Yeah.
And if there's something to put an offer on to mills that want to move 2 by 6 and 2 by 4 10-footers, that's probably something people could have bids on because
but there's an item like 2 by 6 10. I mean, the price has held up really high for such a long time, but I mean, it's so far from being any kind of a value.
Good point.
Its only value is transactional.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 by 4 10s are actually getting to the price, and I bought some yesterday because they're getting down to the price where I know they can go a little lower, but
yeah.
They're a place where I'm willing to start to accumulate them.
It's funny, sure. Greg, because that's the one item I've seen all kinds of bids on almost every day now. Even though they're maybe significantly below what anybody wants for them, but it's the one thing that has enough liquidity where people are still looking for it. So,
Actually, it's great to have the show back. I mean, we're gonna get on a regular schedule now. I mean, I think it's almost time for football season, so we'll probably have to get we'll have to get Peyton and Eli to come on.
Yeah, right? we'll have to get our guest rotation going again and see who we can get on here. But look at Matt, Greg. I appreciate both of you taking your time out of your busy schedules to do this today, and everybody that showed up. This will be live or you can watch this, rewatch it, and send it to people on either Twitter, LinkedIn, or I shouldn't say Twitter anymore. It's called X now, right?
Love that.
Yeah, everybody still calls it Twitter.
So I guess I just have to work on figuring out how to get a more appropriate backdrop. I mean, you guys look so high tech there. Matt out in up in the mountains, and Ash in the studio.
Greg, it throws a good mix. Throws a good mix of diversity into our group.
All right,
guys, real
cheers.
good.